So what's up, Shawn? How's everything been going?
Everything's great.
Yeah.
Great summer, great weather, a little warmer than normal, but we enjoyed it here at the Grand.
Yeah.
It's good for the golf course.
Yeah, it was pretty hot last week. I mean, it was like mid 80s, even 90. Now it's cooled down a lot, so
Yeah,
it's nice.
we are Bermuda grass. Most of the courses in San Diego they're summer grasses, and then the winter it goes dormant. So in the summer, we like it when it gets hot because it gets a nice base, so that when it goes dormant, then it can handle the cart traffic and all the play. So warm summers are actually good.
What does that mean when it goes dormant?
Dormant, so Bermuda grass goes at 58 degrees. It has to be above that for it to grow. So when the overnight temperature starts dipping into the 40s and lower than 58, then the grass basically stops growing.
Oh, wow.
And so what we found was that if we paint it, it looks like it's kind of alive and growing, and that was better than what you call overseeding. So Torrey Pines here in San Diego is pretty much the only course left that overseeds. So every fall, they strip the course down and they put a bunch of grass seed down, and then they grow winter grass through the winter. And they do that in Palm Springs and Scottsdale, Arizona, and stuff like that. But the problem in San Diego, it doesn't typically get hot enough in the summer to kill off the winter grass. So a lot of the courses just go with summer grass year round.
Oh, wow. So they actually like strip the whole course then?
Yeah, they basically verticut it. They get it so that the seed can make contact with the dirt. So it gets real dry and there looks like it's dead. And then they put a bunch of grass seed down and then they water it like crud. And that it takes about 2 weeks, and then the seed pops. And then the problem with it is you can't really drive on it with golf carts for like the first couple months. So like if you play Torrey Pines in the winter, it's great, but they never let you drive the carts anywhere. You have to stay on the cart paths.
Oh, wow.
And so it's not as big of a deal up there because everybody's just dying to play there. But if our members had to basically go cart path only for a couple months, it would be a very difficult thing to sell.
Yeah. So when they're doing that, are they closing the course down?
Typically, they probably close it for about a week. In Palm Springs and Scottsdale, they close for typically almost 2 months, usually about 6 weeks. And most of the members know it. It's usually in September or October. If they have 36 holes, that allows them to do like one month and then the other course the other month. But most courses, they're just closed for those months.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously course maintenance is a huge, a big deal, when you're going to a golf course and playing golf. The only thing I could remember was that one green, 15 green, that got diseased, and we had to do like that temporary green right in front of it. But other than that, I mean, the maintenance has been pretty good here.
Yeah, it's a year-round deal. It's a living organism, we like to say, and ultimately, there's a couple things that people like that aren't necessarily great for golf course. One would be trees. People love to see trees and think it's great. You get more birds or whatever. But ultimately, the roots, if they're too close to greens, they'll start growing into the green, and then that can make it difficult for the grass to grow on the green. And then shade, and the shade from trees creates a lot of wet areas, and those wet areas can then kind of get the wrong grasses start to grow in the kind of the moist areas, and then you spread that throughout the course. So the more sunlight it has, the more airflow is the other thing. There's a lot of golf courses, if they don't have good enough airflow, then they'll put these big fans up, and they'll have to turn them on in the summertime to get airflow.
Wow. Yeah, I think there was one tree on 18 and then another tree on 15 that I saw you guys remove. The one on 18 was right by the lake.
Yep.
And then on 15, it was right on the right side by the green.
Yep.
Was that just because you guys wanted to change the design, or like you were saying, some of the roots?
A lot of times there's heavily congested areas where you're driving on or driving off the hole. And those areas, we need as much area to spread out the cart traffic. So a lot of the time it has to do with creating more areas where there's grass, that you're not funneled into a small little area.
Yeah. And I think, is that also affected by sun? If it's not getting much sunlight and people are driving over that, is that not going to grow back as good?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting, like on, we're kind of talking about our course in general, but most of our year, the sun is south of us. And so depending on where the trees are, that can cast a pretty large shadow. And those trees would be less advantageous than trees that might be on the north side of the golf course where they don't shade any of the grass.
Yeah.
And so it's, you start to learn about shadows and wet areas and all all those things.
So are a lot of those decisions and responsibilities, are a lot of those things falling on you as the director?
So they do, because ultimately, I'm going to be accountable to, the course conditions and stuff, but the superintendent and I work together. But our course was designed by Tom Fazio. And Tom Fazio, in his heyday back in the late 90s when he was building golf courses, he would typically have about 20 golf courses being built at any one time. Wow. And so he had what you call senior architects, and those senior architects are assigned to a particular property. And our senior architect was a gentleman named Dennis Wise, who lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we consult with him every couple of years. And so he comes out and spends a couple of days with us, and we drive around and we talk about, okay, we're having trouble here, we're thinking about doing this. And then he looks at it, gives his opinion, and then he writes a report. And that report we use kind of like a guideline map of what we're going to do over the next couple of years.
Uh-huh. And so I guess it's kind of like a lifetime project then for
it is.
I guess Tom, but more so as super.
Yeah, the thing that I learned the last time he was here is, when they first build a golf course, they put in a lot of eucalyptus trees, and they put in a lot of a hedge called acacia. And the reason they do that is both of those grow very quickly. And what it does is when you first build a golf course, unless it was built in the woods somewhere, you want to give definition to the holes. So the quicker the bushes grow and the trees grow, the more it defines the golf hole. Oh. The problem is 20 years later, your acacia trees are 100 feet tall. And not only are they messy and they rob the course of water and do shade, they also are actually very dangerous, because eucalyptus, they can break at any time and fall on somebody.
Oh, wow.
And so you don't have, so it's like 20 years later, you got to go in and, get rid of what they put in, because what they put in was kind of a quick fix versus a long term. But at our golf course, there's a lot of pine trees that were put in. What everybody in San Diego struggled a little bit in pine trees has been some diseases over the last 10 years. Torrey Pines actually had a beetle. And that's why if you go to Torrey Pines now versus 10 or 15 years ago, there's a lot less trees up at Torrey Pines. That's because they were infected by a beetle, and they had to cut a bunch of the trees out.
Wow. Is that the tree that's on their logo?
Yeah, wow. It's at Torrey Pines. It's it's either a 3-needle or a 5-needle. If you look at the leaf structure, it's like 5 pines or 3 needles. I can't remember. It's one of the two. I worked there for about 3 years. It's been 30 years though since I worked there, so I forgot.
How did you get started in golf?
So my mom played college golf, and so when I was born into kind of what I would call a golfing family. My grandfather took me golfing when I was a little kid at about 5 or 6 years old. And so we played golf every vacation. Just had a blast, going on, spring break or winter break playing golf. And when I got done with college, I played football and baseball in college at the University of Washington. When I was in high school, I actually caddied at a course called Sahali, which held a major championship up in the Seattle area. It was about 10, 15 miles from where I grew up. And when I got out of college, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. And I came down to San Diego with a couple of friends, and I got hired at Torrey Pines. And I started in outside services at Torrey Pines. Wow. Worked there for about 3 years, became the junior golf director, started teaching lessons. And then I was hired to go up to Jolla Country Club. Okay. And I worked there for almost 10 years under a pro that had been there for almost 30 years, a gentleman named Pete Coe, who's kind of a legend in our area. And he was great. He had a bunch of his assistant pros go on to be head professionals at other golf courses. And so I was hired here 16 and a half years ago to be the director of golf.
Wow. And what were you doing at La Jolla as junior director as well?
No, I was the number 2 person in charge. They called
Oh
it the
wow.
assistant head professional. He was the head professional. So I was kind of the number 2 guy and oversaw operations and teach. And, we started things like junior league before PGA had PGA Junior League.
Oh wow.
I have kids that were in my junior golf program there that are now in the business in San Diego, which is kind of funny. Like the operations director at the Bridges, Daniela, she was in my junior program when she was 7 years old.
Wow.
So I've got kids that I taught when they were like 7 who are now in the business, which is really fun.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, just thinking back on that in your life, like how time has just gone by, and you used to be there, but now you've been here for 16 and a half years. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate because La Jolla Country Club, as a bird flies, is probably about 8 miles or something from here, and it's not on the ocean. It's up on the hill overlooking the ocean. It's been open since 1927. Wow. A traditional country club, and then here we're about 3-4 miles from the ocean. So I've basically worked at Torrey and La Jolla and here, which is all within about 8 miles of each other, and it's been great. I've seen, each of the course evolve. They haven't really changed that much, to be honest. La Jolla. Yeah, La Jolla hasn't changed that much. Torrey Pines, they did a remodel in the South Course so they could get the U.S. Open in '08, but did a remodel in the North Course a few years ago. But it's really the same design, same flow, same everything. And then here, since I've been here, we're on a bunch of canyons, so we can't really go, add nine more holes, or we can't really adjust anything because everything was agreed upon when they were building the course that you can't go upset some of these hillsides because they're protected. And obviously, the state and the city, will slap your hand if you do try to, do anything in those areas.
Yeah. Is La Jolla 18?
It is. Okay. It is. It's a little shorter course by industry standards. It's like 66-85, which nowadays most courses are about 7,200 yards. But it plays longer because it's got a grass called kikuya, and the ball doesn't roll. Really? You carry it in the air, and the ball lands, and it rolls 1 yard. And so it plays much longer. And but the cool part is the clubhouse. It overlooks the ocean. It sits up about 100 feet above the town of La Jolla, and every course, every hole on the course, you can see the ocean from because it sits on the side of a hill.
Right. What would you say, like, the difference is in terms of the two courses between La Jolla and here?
I would say, as much as that is, considered kind of a tight golf course, it's not nearly as tight as our golf course. Our golf course has canyons on most holes on both sides. And when you add the length being longer here than there, it's more of a challenge here for the good golfer. But the nice part is when Tom Fazio designed the golf course, he was thinking about all skill levels of golfers. So our forward tees are just under 5,000 yards. And at La Jolla Country Club, it was built so long ago, they didn't put in a lot of extra tee boxes. So the women's course is actually a par 74, and it actually plays almost probably harder than our women's course here because it's just so long.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess you wouldn't think the tee boxes would make that big of a difference. I guess it does change the course tremendously.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you get members or people that play one course all the time, and they'll find that if they move up or move back a tee, sometimes the trouble either plays more into, more trouble, or and sometimes less. So sometimes people, when they play back, they don't actually shoot much higher of a score because they come up short of all the bunkers and the trouble. And then when they play up, now they kind of funnel themselves into a little bit more trouble, and their score isn't any better, even though they're on an up tee.